that the government of Nigeria can implement from a perspective of a big tech company and the solutions that we have available and have been rolling out, both in the private sector but with governments as well. Next slide. So this slide details what the African Development Bank sees as the high five, they call it, priority areas for development in Africa. I think it directly translates to what is necessary or what is possible for advanced development in Nigeria. The priority areas, for those who may not be able to see, are light and power, feeding, industrialization, integrating the entire continent, and improving the quality of life. With those particular priority areas, there are goals and objectives that are to be accomplished by 2025. And if you look on the right-hand side, it is supporting technologies and digital platforms that will enable those goals to be met. I'm very proud when I see this type of framework, and it came from the president of the African Development Bank, who also happens to be a Nigerian. And so he's doing us very proud in that role. But you'll see that there's a role for GovTech, smart machine, fintech, e-commerce, e-mobility, e-commerce, and e-health, edtech, in enabling those priorities and objectives of universal access to electricity, agricultural transformation, economic diversification, regional market integration, and access to social and economic opportunities. When I think of the topic of international best practices, my go-to is always to look home first and see what's going on the continent, see what's going on in Nigeria, and how we can amplify those things, though there are, of course, some use cases and examples that we see abroad. Next slide, please. So, some of the ways that government can leverage tech and digital platforms for e-services include utilizing the trends that we see around access to social media and the proliferation of the use of social media. Here in Nigeria, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp are really largely and widely used social media platforms that can be leveraged for e-government services. Then also looking at artificial intelligence, data analytics, fintech, and other emerging technologies to accelerate the rollout of e-government services. Just by way of example, Meta has a program called Data for Good. We have data scientists that work at the company, and they use the data that we have to help both the private sector, for instance, in doing network analytics for how to plan their infrastructure builds, but also for government-related functions. So doing population density identification, doing electrification, and connecting schools, for example. One good example of such a project that actually has been kicked off in Nigeria is a partnership between UNICEF and the ITU, and it's called Project Giga School Connectivity. Actually, some members of the panel are also a part of this program, and maybe they'll talk about it. Meta's role in that particular project was to provide network connectivity data. And if you just use your search engine of choice to look up the Giga project, you will find that Nigeria was one of the pilot countries for this program. And there are interactive maps that we use to find out what the connectivity is like around schools. So one, to map the schools, but then to also find out what networks are in existence around the schools that can be utilized to increase connectivity at those schools, and then developing partnerships to ensure that those schools can be connected. So it's an ongoing project that I'm proud that Meta has been a part of, but also others here, such as Liquid and Erickson, have also been a part of the project. The other thing that has been really big across the globe, but also particularly on the continent, is utilizing government facilities for connectivity and other useful services. And so looking at facilities such as post offices, looking at where there are government buildings and how you can leverage that for innovation hubs, leverage that to provide Wi-Fi access. That's another way of innovating around existing resources that we see happen. And I'm very, very happy to see that it's one of the efforts that the Ministry of Communications, Innovation, and Digital Economy is looking at right now with NIPOS. So I want to ask, as they go to the next slide, has anyone here heard of the Nigeria Integrated Energy Planning Tool? Just show of hands. Nigeria Integrated Energy Planning Tool. Okay, so I have just a very short video that is about it.
Planning tools can help you identify the best locations for new development, using a combination of indicators and data filters. Let's say that you're looking at unelectrified communities in Kano State that have at least 100 households and at least 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy demand. You can visualize these communities that match these characteristics, and then zoom in on any territory of interest. The tool can also rank locations by various indicators, such as total electricity demand, total population, and so on. You can even overlay the road network and mobile coverage data to see how well that communities. In this scenario, the LPG data is bad enough, which will allow you to plan the expansion of government services.
Thereabouts because of time, but this just gives you a signal. So a project that was done, I guess now about a year ago, through funding in partnership with the government. The tool itself uses Meta's high-resolution settlement layer, and this is something that is in existence that we're not leveraging for e-service in our country. And it would happen, or is happening somewhere else.